Dr. Meloy's expertise has made him a consultant to the counterintelligence and counter-terrorism divisions of the FBI and the United Kingdom's Home Office.
Typically about 70% of stalkers of celebrity figures are males. They tend to have some criminality and drug abuse in their background, but what is most notable is typically they have a major mental disorder, a major psychiatric diagnosis, and that has been a part of their psychological functioning for a number of years. Personality disorders do not have a sudden onset. Usually characteristics of the personality disorder can be seen quite early on in life and then tend to crystallize in adolescence and become much more cemented in adulthood.
As soon as a person believes they have a relationship with a celebrity, then the behaviors of how to go about fulfilling or changing that relationship are quite predictable. They do what anyone would do to try to develop or sever a relationship. They call, they write, they try to visit. They may hire lawyers to stop it. They may seek court action to prevent it, and so on.
In 2001, Swiss tennis star Martina Hingis testified against her stalker, Dubravko Racevich, in a Florida courtroom. Racevich was a 46-year-old married father and naval engineer. For over a year, he sent Hingis 150 letters and 50 faxes. Finally, he tried to make contact at a tennis tournament in Florida. When Hingis arrived in court, Racevich could hardly contain his delight. When he took the stand, he tried to explain his actions.
So you didn't chase her, you followed her?
No, I just, when I had time, I wanted to be closer and express that my intention is positive, supportive, and I wanted to build a relation, not a relation with Martina 2-3 nights in hotel, as like maybe what somebody wanted, and said, look, I had pretty good fun with the famous Martina Hingis. Record #1 was sleeping last night with me. That was not my intention. My intention was build a friendship, relation, and maybe from this relation can find later, if she really wants, we can make a marriage or like that.
As Racevich was questioned, his irrational thoughts were exposed.
And you've said that you love Martina Hingis.
Yes, I love Martina Hingis.
And she loves you.
Martina Hingis, I can't say like that because, but in some period of our relation, she expressed that she has some feelings to me. I can't say that she loves me because we didn't have sex. Sex is one also important part of the relation. I didn't want hurry with that because I wanted to build this relation normal way, and once when we get that needs to be top of our relation.
The jury found Racevich guilty. He was sentenced to jail for 2 years. 4 years later, Anna Kournikova, the Russian pin-up girl of tennis, faced her stalker, William Lepeska. Lepeska had swum naked across Miami's Biscayne Bay looking for her home. He was arrested when he turned up at the wrong house. He had a violent history. He had already served 7 years for stabbing a college student. When questioned, he made little sense.
Guy from New York with mafia problems, trouble with the mafia, or at least, I don't know, some kind of connection to the mafia.
Lepeska was deemed to be mentally incompetent to stand trial. He was sent to a mental institution for treatment. Hingis and Kournikova came through their ordeals by stalker relatively unscathed. Not so Monika Seles. Seles was 19 and at the prime of her tennis career. She had won 8 Grand Slam tournaments. Bizarrely, she was attacked at a Hamburg tournament by a stalker whose obsession was tennis rival, Steffi Graf. Seles was severely injured when Günter Pasch attacked her on court with a boning knife. She took months to recover and never fully regained her dominance of the game. Parsh received a 2-year suspended sentence. Robert Hoskins pursued and stalked Madonna in 1995. He was in a bad way. His wife had left him and taken the children. His brother had kicked him off the farm where he lived and worked. He had a history of assaults on police officers. He was a heavy user of methamphetamine, a stimulant drug which can create a state of delusion.
Robert Hoskins began to believe that either he could marry Madonna or Madonna was his wife. And he traveled from Oregon down to Los Angeles to see her. His first approach to Madonna, he climbed over the fence and went about 50 feet onto her property on the long driveway. Her security guard yelled at her, a man named Basil Stevens, and Hoskins fled, and they had no idea who he was.
Incidents like this were not unusual. Trespassers are caught about 25 times a year at Madonna's various properties around the world. Hoskins' failed attempt was not going to put him off. He was determined to meet Madonna. 24 hours later, he was back.
Hoskins had got on the intercom down by the front gate and said to Madonna's assistant, "I'd like to see my wife." The assistant said she wasn't available, and Hoskins said, to paraphrase, "I'm going to kill the bitch and everyone else in the house."
Security was alerted. The threat was taken seriously. A guard confronted Hoskins in a heated exchange. Madonna was outside exercising and returned home in the midst of the hostile encounter.
And within probably anywhere from 50 to 75 feet of Hoskins and her guard, Hoskins said, as he looked at Madonna, "I'm going to slit her throat from ear to ear." This became a very important threat statement in the trial because it was a homicidal threat and it was uttered in close physical proximity to Madonna.
Madonna was ushered inside her home. Hoskins fled the scene but left behind a note. It talked about his yearning to marry Madonna. It was written on a fundamentalist religious text called Defiled, which carries sinister undertones.
This defiled text, if you read it carefully, says if you have sexual intercourse with anybody but your spouse, you should be killed. And so we have in this note what is oftentimes typical with celebrity stalkers, and that is evidence that he yearned for her affection and at the same time was furious for her behavior.
With Hoskins in hiding, Madonna carried on as normal, but fearful that he may return. 9 weeks later, he did.
He climbs over the gate of her estate, goes up into the back area of her home near the swimming pool, and there he once again encounters Basil Stevens, a security guard. In that encounter, Hoskins and Stevens get into physical combat. Hoskins wrestles away from Stevens a .45 caliber Colt pistol. Stevens is able to regain control of it and shoots Hoskins twice, once in the arm and once in the abdomen.
Yeah, Captain Melton, open the gate, please. Yes.
Detective Mike McDonough made this statement to the press.
The suspect attempted to disarm the security guard, at which time the security guard was able to push the suspect away. The suspect again got to his feet and went after the security guard, at which time a shooting occurred, and Mr. Hotchkiss was injured and transported to Cedars Sinai Medical Center.
Hoskins survived, but was then prosecuted for stalking.
While he was in custody, in his jail cell, he made several notations on the wall and on the mattress and comments to fellow prisoners as well as guards that he was married to Madonna, he couldn't understand why he was there, and when he gets out he was going to kill her for what had happened.
Madonna was terrified of Hoskins and didn't want to have anything to do with the case. But the judge issued a bench warrant of $5 million if she failed to testify. Madonna appeared in court and came face to face with her stalker once more.
The irony here, however, is that this is the closest that Hoskins ever got to her. And in celebrity cases, the fact that typically the celebrity has to testify often brings her into close contact with the stalker. And as a result of her testimony, Hoskins was sentenced to 10 years in prison.
He thought that Madonna was not a person, rather was a spirit that could inhabit any body. So theoretically, this gentleman could be walking down the street and decide one day that I'm Madonna and decide to act out violently against me or anybody else in the general public. So that's an individual that needs to stay off the street as long as humanly possible.
Celebrity security is now big business. Amiga Threat Management is a security company run by the former LAPD detective, John Lane.
Well, our company is a threat assessment group, and we, behind the scenes, are charged with working with many a celebrity and public figure to help them or help protect them from those that would otherwise inappropriately pursue and sometimes form intent to do harm.
Michael Eubanks is Lane's partner.
Our whole thing is to prevent the encounter. We don't want that encounter. Now, you can't stop that when you're going to a premiere, you're going to the Oscars, or you're going to a, some kind of a screening. But you can when you're in the private, when you're doing the hotel transfers, or you're going to the airport, et cetera, et cetera. There are things that can be done to reduce that client's exposure.
A few stars refuse to worry about the deranged fan. Paul Bettany, who starred in Firewall, a film about a kidnapping, says he and his wife, Jennifer Connelly, feel very safe in their home.
I don't want to live my life in fear. If that kind of endless peering into our lives began to become unbearable, we'd just move. But we live in New York City and nobody cares.
For younger celebrities, there is often a dilemma in choosing between exposure and security.
When you talk about stars protecting themselves, it's kind of a catch-22, particularly if you're an up-and-coming young star and you want to generate attention to yourself. You want to make yourself available to your fan base. You want to pose for photographs, you want to sign autographs, that sort of thing. But that very behavior works against them when you start talking about obsessed individuals.
For John Lane's team, it's important to try and see a potential threat before it can manifest itself.
The primary methodology of stalkers to communicate with celebrities is through the written form. It's typically the only way they have access in their mind to their celebrity. That's because they don't know otherwise where they live, they don't know how to physically make contact with them, so they write them.
Letters, however, do give us indications that whether or not an individual is mentally ill. And that oftentimes is not only content of the letters, but it's the format of the letters, the way the letter's written.
You know, these are just examples of communications that typically can be sent to a celebrity. When we talk about mental illness, I think this is a good example with people that are very disorganized in their thought processes, and they're writing a variety of statements, disorganized issues on the outsides of the envelopes. And that's before we even get started with the disorganized thoughts that are contained in a letter. So this is the kind of stuff that many times you have to struggle through in trying to decipher what this person's all about. Letters like this, and it doesn't mean anything, but somebody has sent a communication to a particular person, and that's the content. So the challenge is, is to take a look and get a sense of, does that mean anything? Or is it just the byproduct of a very disturbed mind?
Stalkers also send gifts of a disturbing and offensive nature.